And I sat through a workshop at the King's School in Sydney, run by Barry Walmsley, but they brought over an examiner from London, and he explained that there was a situation that had occurred in London where a leading orchestra had a piece of music presented to them, and there was an area where everybody had to improvise. And these fantastically talented musicians did not feel equipped to improvise even for 10 seconds.
Hello teachers, and welcome back to the Topcast. Whether you're in a summertime break at the moment and sunning yourself on a beach somewhere, or whether you are shivering through a cold winter as we are here down in the Southern Hemisphere, then wishing you all the best. I hope things are going well for you and your teaching in your studio, and I look forward to sharing today's episode with you. My name is Tim Topham, your host for the show, and if this is your first time here, then thank you so much for tuning in. And a big shout out to all my Top Music Pro members around the world. In today's episode, I'm interviewing a fellow Australian studio owner whose name is Jaime Gibson. And Jaime has an incredible wealth of experience, both as a performer and also as a teacher in lots of different parts of the world. You're going to hear stories from the Juilliard School over to Prague, running schools in Prague, I think it was, and right through every sort of aspect of online teaching, running an online studio, but also general teaching tips, particularly for those new young teachers coming through our profession. Jaime's very passionate as a member of his local Music Teachers Association in guiding and supporting young teachers coming into the profession. So we'll be talking about you guys as well. Jaime is a multi-instrumentalist who holds a Bachelor of Music and Grad Dip Ed from Sydney and a Master's in Educational Leadership, which he attained over in the United Kingdom. As a performer, Jaime has performed at Royal Albert Hall, Wembley Arena, yes, you heard that right, the Sydney Opera House, and has toured Africa, Russia, Mexico, and throughout Europe. In 2020, Jaime formed the Gibson Online Music School and took it to the international education market, and we're going to be talking a lot about how he did that today and how it's growing. He currently has students in 6 countries and across most states of Australia. Teaching faculty hold music degrees and specialise in e-learning, using the school's unique platform and technologies. So we're going to find out exactly how he runs that, how he found his teachers, what it's like to run only an online music school, and what he thinks of that as a model, and lots more. I can't wait to introduce him. Here we go. Let's jump in. Welcome to the show, Jaime Gibson from up in Sydney. How are you going today?
I'm great, thanks, Tim. How are you?
I'm very good, and I'm delighted that we could find a time which worked. I know there's been a bit of mucking around people won't know about in the back end of trying to organise interviews, but we managed to make it, and I'm just stoked to have you on the show with us today to share your wisdom in a whole lot of different areas. But I thought, why don't we just start off getting to know you just a little bit. You're actually a piano, clarinet, and sax teacher, I believe, and you run a multi-instrumental studio in Sydney, as I mentioned. So tell us, how did you get started with the studio?
Sure. Well, the studio naturally grew out of me teaching overseas. So I left Australia in 2015, and I found that when I was in the UK or when I was in Central Europe, that there was people back in Australia that I wanted to keep teaching. So I was doing it, but in a bit of a dodgy way. Like back then, you do it via Skype, and there'd be intermittent issues. I returned to Australia at the beginning of 2020.
Oh wow! Okay, that's quite recent then.
Yeah. Flew back in just before the pandemic hit, in the eyes of Australia anyway.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any positions or anything lined up. I used to be a director of music in private schools. And so I thought, well, this is the perfect time to look at online teaching.
Got it. Okay. And so the doors started shutting, everything went online, and you were like, okay, I've got to run my studio a little bit differently to how I might have predicted that it was going to run originally. So tell us, how does it look today? How many teachers have you got with you? What's the mix of online, in person?
Yeah. So we have 100% online. And so up front, I had no choice. I mean, in the pandemic in 2020, you couldn't ask people to come to your home to teach. And my friends who own studios, they all had to go online.
Yep.
And I thought, why not? I mean, I love technology. I thought at that point, why not just stop and see what's working, what's changing? It made me look into things that I hope we discuss today, like MTB exams. It made me look at what's happening around the world, what's happening with things like Tomplay, which I hope we discuss, and then go, what are the things that normally work anyway? Now, I used to be a classroom teacher, so self-directed learning, planning ahead of time, doing a flipped classroom, those kind of educational procedures were stuff that I'd used in the class. And I thought, why not try them in a home music studio?
Yeah, and let's definitely start talking about some of those things you mentioned. Tomplay, fantastic app. I saw it. That was being talked about in a Facebook group just the other day. MTB, which is the Music Teachers Board, a new online exam board from the UK. So yeah, really keen to find out a little bit more about that and the technology you're using to run everything online. Another part of your role is that you're on the Music Teachers Association for New South Wales. And you mentioned to me in some of the correspondence that you've been noticing more and more questions coming through from younger teachers or people wanting to get into teaching. And so I thought we could also perhaps, if you've got some ideas there, could cover that now actually. Just some questions that you've been getting and some of your thoughts about that as they enter this completely new world of teaching, really.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up because this is something I'm really passionate about. So I'm 43.
There you go. Me too. Yay.
Oh, really?
Exactly the same.
I came out of university. I started university when I was actually 17, studied the Bachelor of Music here in Sydney at WSU, actually. And I came out and immediately jumped into the local public primary schools. And I started sewing in and teaching these, the students at that time in year 3 and 4 on woodwind instruments in the concert band. And then those people have now graduated. They grew up, they went to university, and they're trying to find their way as professional studio music teachers and peripatetic tutors, as we'd call them in private schools or public schools. And I actually have them coming back to me and saying, what is the next steps? And that's been happening for about a decade. Like, how do I do invoicing? How do I get accredited? And this is something that I'm really passionate about and trying to connect people. And I love what you're doing with your platform. I really when I came back in 2020, I quickly found your resources and I went, yes, this is a similar mindset where we're trying to enable the next generation of instrumental tutors to succeed, to set up a successful business, maybe even to do things like discussed in the E-Myth about, really processes, being able to scale a business. And so over the last, little while, I've been really thinking about that in my own home studio and completely going online. I want to stay online because that way, actually, it's easier to scale because it makes you really think about your processes and what you're doing on a daily basis in your home studio. I feel like I might have gone a little bit off on track there, so feel free to redirect me.
No. I love on podcasts having a free-flowing conversation and just as if I was having a cup of coffee with you and we're just chatting about everything that's going on because there is so much happening and I love the alignment that we have between a lot of the things that we do with regard to the way we shape and help the teachers that we work with. So thank you for your comment about that too, because that whole dichotomy between business and pedagogy is just so crucial and just the business stuff is just so often missing. Even today, in the US, many more universities have pedagogy courses over there, music teaching pedagogy. You can go and study that. But still the business side tends to be a very small part of that.
I'm so glad you said that. This morning I was catching up with a fellow council member, actually the treasurer of the Music Teachers Association New South Wales, and the thing we were talking about was exactly on this topic. We were looking at what is the process of accreditation? What is the relevant process of accreditation in 2021? Considering that there are so many Bachelor of Music degrees, and you can go off and you can study Bachelor of Music, study audio engineering, you can study performance, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've covered pedagogy or how to successfully teach students year after year and able to help them to achieve their best in the quickest and most natural time possible. And also, like you just said there, the business side of things. So we're looking at that really hard. And at the moment, to me, it seems like there are actually some great certificate and diploma courses or perhaps mentoring, which is what I see your model providing that fills those gaps. And it's so important. Otherwise, from what I've seen in my career, when a student graduates university from studying a Bachelor of Music, in less than 3 years, they've decided whether to stick with that and grow their own studio and tuition program, or perhaps move into banking or finance or another discipline.
Yeah, and that of course is just such a sad loss. There's also a real challenge I think we have between students coming out of school and then into university doing performance degrees and expecting there to be a performance career for them, which really there isn't much, and even less so in this day and age. And so we have a lot of those people going into teaching, but a lot of them may not even really want to teach, and many certainly don't know how to and haven't got those skills. So I love what you're saying about accreditation. It's something that I've thought about long and hard, and tried to sort of work out where I could fit in and help this process, because there is nothing in the world really that music teachers have to do to become music teachers. I say that to adults around the world regularly. If you wanted to start teaching clarinet, sax, or pipe organ, you could just go and do it right now. There's nothing stopping that. And I guess that's good in some ways. There's lots of freedom and flexibility, but also having some barriers to entry can also help improve the professionalism of this as a career. So yeah, maybe we should do some more talking about that ourselves.
Yeah, I think there's a natural synergy, and I'm sure you would have seen it in your studio. When I look back over the years, whenever I have aligned all the various aspects of my teaching pedagogy, success comes for the students, and then that breeds a good name in whichever community that might be. It might be online. I mean, I'm building synergy at the moment in Hong Kong.
Cool.
More and more Hong Kong students are coming in. I'm finding that Sydney 7 p.m. is about 5 p.m. Hong Kong time. A lot of students are coming out of like the Harrow School, which is originally from the UK, where Winston Churchill went to school. But, they got a Harrow School in Hong Kong, and they're coming out of class, they're going home.
There's a Harrow School in Hong Kong? I didn't know that.
Absolutely.
Really?
It's a great music program.
Jeez.
And I teach those students starting at 7 o'clock Sydney time. It's a great time at the moment. This time of year, it's got a little bit dark. I'm comfortable teaching up to about 8:30 at night. So there's this room in each weekday night to just fill up those extra slots in your studio, or to pass them on to my other tutors. And to answer your question earlier, I realized I forgot that one. You said, like, what's the studio look like?
Yeah.
What's the teacher numbers, that kind of thing. So at the moment, I've got 7 tutors covering strings through woodwind, piano, vocals, and guitar. And they're teaching students across Australia. So even though I'm in Sydney, we're finding that at the moment, there's a lot of online students outside Brisbane. I'm not sure why, but there's something attracted them from outside Brisbane, just, within 30-minute drive to here. Also over in Perth, got a few students down in Melbourne. And then naturally over the last year, students have popped up from, as I mentioned, Hong Kong, South Korea, and the US.
Wow. And have you been specifically marketing to those international audiences, or are they just naturally finding you online?
It's a combination. My wife works in digital marketing, so when I notice something, it is. I'll shout out to her, Taya Conforzi Digital. That's what she does.
Absolutely.
And when I find, I like to find a lead or an area organically. So normally it comes through social media in some way. There'll be one lead. I start teaching the student. When I hear the right sort of things, like for example, they're from a school music program that has a large concert band program, because I'm woodwind predominantly. And maybe there's also a jazz band attached to that. Then I'll start to go, okay, I'll ask a few more questions, feed the information through to my wife, and then she will start to have a campaign around that area and just make sure people know what we're doing in that area. And then there's a nice synergy there. It'll just lead through. And then once I start teaching one student in a family, perhaps a woodwind instrument, there's a brother or sister who might want to learn guitar or drums, and we quickly connect them. And there's no barriers. That's the great thing about online.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I've got so many more questions, but I want to come back to a couple that I was going to ask earlier. One of the other things I've noticed about your work online and the things I've read about you is that we definitely have alignment in creativity, in modern approaches, digital innovation, as we've said. How do you feel that element of your studio sets you apart from others, that creative approach, using more technology and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really big question for me, because my comfortability in focusing on creativity has come from doing what we do well in Australia. I love the AMEB. I support them, and I work very closely with the AMEB.
So for people overseas, that's the Australian Music Examination Board, just to let everyone know. So that's the exam system that most people use here in Australia. Sorry, Jamie, carry on.
Yes. No, that's great. And there's eight levels. And probably about 14 years ago or so, I was looking at all the different certification boards around the world, and I found that most had 8. They seem to have grown out of the ABRSM, Associated Boards of the Royal School of Music program. But Canada, for some reason, in one of their programs has 12. Don't know if you knew that, Tim. I can't remember. But I remember looking going, how do they fit 12 grades in?
The lines with school, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, oh, okay. Maybe that's how it worked. So I worked my way up through those. And then, growing up in Australia, we're a big island. And I was only comfortable working within what I knew and what I'd grown up with. And then when I went and I started teaching in the UK as a director of music in London, I started to work more closely with the Royal College of Music in London, and then a few years later with the Juilliard School in New York. And in that, I saw that actually right from both the entry level and then at the higher levels, there's such a focus on creativity. And when I reflected back to how I'd grown up in AMUB, I went, well, that isn't necessarily there. I'd experienced it when I'd branched into Trinity exams, and I saw that they encouraged from grade 1 a focus on improvisation. And I sat through a workshop at the King's School in Sydney, run by Barry Walmsley, but they brought over an examiner from London, and he explained that there was a situation that had occurred in London where a leading orchestra had a piece of music presented to them, and there was an area where everybody had to improvise. And these fantastically talented musicians did not feel equipped to improvise even for 10 seconds. And so Trinity College of London went, wait a minute, what if we inserted that from grade 1 as an option? So you can have your scales, you can have your oral skills, you do your pieces, but why not encourage people to improvise, even if it's just with 3 notes for 10 seconds? Start to build that scaffolding in. And when I went and did some training at the Juilliard School in Juilliard School in New York over in 2017, I'm sitting with some of the most elite educators in the world, and and then the Juilliard staff, which are at the top of their field. Juilliard is consistently ranked number 1 in the world for music as a university. And the whole focus was on getting us to go and create, so that then we would go back to our schools and our classrooms and encourage the next generation to create. It wasn't on discipline and reading and getting through grades as quickly as possible.
There you go. I would not have predicted that, Jamie. I would not have predicted that. My view of externally of the Juilliard School, which I have no experience inside of, is that it is quite traditional. It's about interpretation and performance and passing tests and exams and reciting and memory and all that stuff. So that's actually blown my mind a bit. Yeah,
they have a product which was built in conjunction with the Nord Anglia Education Group, which is it's a group of 70 schools worldwide. They're all premium network schools, and they spent a lot of money building a product with them called the Juilliard Creative Classroom.
There you go.
And the whole focus in there is creating from the ground up, even though you're focusing on the works of Mozart and Beethoven, and in jazz, Louis Armstrong, and then there's a whole great range of world music compositions as well.
We're going to have to do some more research on that one, I think. It sounds like exactly what we all need, and what I've been helping teachers with over the last 10 years, really. The other exam board that does do improvisation is ANZCA, ANZCA, which is the Australian New Zealand Cultural Arts Board. Not sure if you're familiar with them, but I've also always liked their sort of approach.
I'm not. Could you fill me in? What do they do? How do they insert that into the grades?
Yeah, well, they look, it's been a long time since I've looked at their curriculum book, so I don't want anyone to quote me on this. But in a similar way to Trinity, which I was aware of, they do have those improvisationary, I think they've got it as an activity, like the sight reading and things that you can do in Trinity. But they also are really flexible with students if they're performing a piece. Number one, they have many more sort of pop and modern kind of options than some of the other exam boards, but you're also very welcome to improvise an ending or an intro, or not quite play what's written on the page if that's okay with the style, that sort of approach. So a little bit more flexible and a bit more freedom. I hope I'm doing justice.
I'm going to look into that. Yeah, because what I love is, like, if I'm teaching, and I'm sure we'll touch on this in a moment, like let's say I'm using Tomplay. And should I jump across to this, or do you want to unpack what Tomplay is?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a great segue to MTB, and I know that they're linked with Tomplay too. So let's talk about Tomplay. So this is an app. Tell us what it does and how you use it.
Sure. Okay, so I actually came across Tomplay through MTB, which is the Music Teachers Board in the UK. Now, as a fellow Australian, I'll just tell you how I... the link is coffee.
Where's this going?
Do you like your coffee?
I've just finished my coffee. Here it is. Yeah.
Okay, I've got mine over there. So as an Aussie in London, I continually came across bad coffee, but I was teaching, I was head of music in Hammersmith Academy. And just next to Hammersmith is a beautiful place called Chiswick.
Oh, Chiswick. Yeah, I've got relatives that used to live there. Yep, beautiful.
Chiswick has a lot of Australians in there, which means all the cafes have good coffees. You order a coffee, you're really getting a nice cappuccino with a good head on it. Okay, so I was quite regularly down in Chiswick.
All our American listeners are just going, oh, what are these Aussies on about again with their coffee?
So there's a standard in cafes there, and I came across some marketing material from Music Teachers Board while I was at Hammersmith Academy. Then I moved across to Poland actually, and I was director of performing arts in a British school there. And I kept getting the marketing material and being a little bit isolated at that point, I started to think, this is really interesting. They are fully, unapologetically online.
Mm.
And this was about 2 years before the pandemic hit. And I thought, we're trying to fly across examiners for Rock School, for Trinity, for ABRSM into Poland. And you can imagine the logistical nightmare that is. And we had hundreds of students doing exams, very large peripatetic program in the school. And I thought, if we could go online, this would be great. So I started to work with them a bit. And then 2020 comes, and I went, well, I have no options now. I have to go with MTB. And I started to look into their syllabus and teach my students from it. And I saw that in the syllabus, there was direct links to the exact track in tomplay.com. So it was a natural link, just getting my students and myself to buy the pieces, which have professionally recorded examples of the piece that you can actually interact with. You can slow them down, speed it up, remove the guide track, decide how, if it's a pop song like Careless Whisper, as an alto saxophonist.
Classic.
Yeah. You can decide how much of the lead vocal or the backing vocals you want to have as you play along with that piece. And that's the beauty of Tomplay. It just fits naturally into creativity with your students through an exam platform.
I really like, I also saw in the curriculum documents from MTB those links as well. And I thought, oh, that is super clever, because one of the challenges, I think, particularly with online teaching, but also of just the isolation of playing an instrument, particularly a solo instrument like the ones you teach, is that you want some cool backing tracks. You want ones that are easily accessible, that students can play along with and that sound great, so that they're going to have more fun, be more engaged, be more motivated, because, playing a sax along with a whole band and playing something that sounds cool and everyone knows the sound of, that's going to make you more motivated to play. And then to be able to be assessed on that, well, that just makes great sense, really.
Yeah, because as an educator, and I've spent over 20 years working in classrooms and having to hit benchmarks, whether it be HSC, school certificate, VET courses, TAFE, GCSE, A-level, or international baccalaureate, you've always got to have specific pieces meeting specific criteria and outcomes are needed. I get that, and I appreciate it, because it keeps us employed and it keeps us also being able to really benchmark how we're doing as teachers and how our students are doing and improve our pedagogy. But at the same time, lots of students don't want to fit within that, and their parents don't want to hear about that. They want them to actually experience the joy of creating music and sharing their performance of a piece with others. And what I think Tomplay and MTB help us do is go, okay, well, let's maybe just focus on 3 or 4 pieces that are about the same level, that are where you're at. And maybe Monday you might either want to do a performance exam, or you might want to do a full exam with all the scales and bits and pieces that can fill it out. And what's been great to see is that I don't have to have a slant towards MTB. Over the last little while, Trinity has brought this on in a big way as well. Amy B have brought this in a big way across the country. It's been great to see exam boards move, because in 2020, there were situations where I was teaching students in, for example, South Korea, and I'd be heading down a path. I'm not going to mention which exam board with. You're preparing for the exam. The pandemic hits their country and there's no options for months. And actually you lose those students because they were headed towards a goal and suddenly it's taken away. Rather than at that point, what should have happened was the exam board should have, to use that classic term, pivoted.
Yeah, well, I think we've got to give credit to these exam boards are massive old institutions. And yeah, any kind of change takes time. And I have to say that while it did take time for them to move to offer online or video recorded lessons or things, they've actually shifted a massive amount in the last year. I'm looking particularly at the AMB,
Yes, they have.
but also, as you say, the ABRSM and Trinity and other boards, they've really gone, well, how can we make this work? And I think this will actually be more successful for their businesses in the long run because they're going to have more flexibility in how students are assessed. I was actually watching, I don't know, did you see any of the Sydney International Piano Competition?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
So that's run every 2 years at the Sydney Opera House. Would normally be, but of course, pandemic times, they did it all online. And I thought that this is fascinating because this is a world-class, they earn tens of thousands of dollars prize money and go and play for orchestras around the world. And this is a big, big thing. And they were all assessed. They auditioned by video. All of the segments were recorded by video in the students' own studios. There was requirements around, had to be one take and there had to be someone on Zoom actually watching the take and things like that. But I thought, wow, even an organisation like that, which could be looked at as being pretty traditional, has come. I mean, who would have thought an online piano competition of that standard being approved for video recordings in the students' studios? I think it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great time to shake up these really well-established, and I love established institutions. I like being able to look back through music history and go, Renaissance, Baroque, the exam boards come out. There's a natural lineage and progression to where we are, in this day and age. But with that can come rigid attitudes. And it's great that over the last sort of, I'd say 12 to 18 months, there's been a real focus on how can we shake this up and also make it relevant to studio teachers and relevant to students that are coming through school or just coming through the university system on their music and creative arts disciplines.
I want to come back to your own studio. I saw that on your website you have open mic nights, and I wondered what on earth these were and how they worked in an online setting.
So last year, I'm sitting in my house here in Sydney, and I'm going, I'm a performer. Like what I loved from 2015, late 2015 when I left Australia, I would take my sax and my clarinet, and I went to Russia, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Croatia, London, or, China, all over the place, take my sax and my clarinet. And the way I would determine what I was going to do while on holidays in those places is I would take my instrument. I'm thinking right now, particularly in Sarajevo, hop out of the car in Sarajevo, know nothing about the place, and just ask, where's the local jazz club? And the people don't understand what language I'm speaking. I don't know the response, but the word jazz, okay, great. I'd be, so you walk down underground. I'm thinking in Sarajevo in particular, walk into this place. It's just got smashed mirrors all across the wall. Looks like literally a hole dug out of the ground. There's some guys on a stage. The place is packed. You sort of indicate that you'd like to play. It's a bit of a jam session. You go up and you start to, play with these musicians and interact. And eventually some jazz standard will come in, or a funk piece or a rock piece. And now you're jamming. And when you come off stage, someone will buy you a beer or something similar, and you have a chat and you start to really become part of that community and learn about that culture. And so when the pandemic hit last year, I'm sitting here and I'm going, how do I recreate that experience? I've just had 5 years traveling the world, making great friendships and really doing music. And music works best live, I feel. And so I did some research and I saw that most open mic nights were pre-recorded and someone's literally sitting in a YouTube creator studio and hitting play. And why would someone watch that? And so I thought, well, let's find out what we can do. So I started last year and just went, okay, once a month, we'll have students from wherever they are join the one stream and live have to recreate or create their performance. And that's where I really started to fall in love with Tomplay, because I found the best thing was to have probably an iPad via Bluetooth to a nice speaker. The student would learn about a condenser mic and connect a condenser mic to the computer, have a good quality, receiver there, have backing track played live, and they would perform on whatever their instrument is on top live to people that are on that same stream. And that's actually been a big part of growing my studio, because they, when someone knows they're going to perform next Wednesday, they send links to their grandparents and friends and school friends. And sometimes even silly things happen, like the parents will sit in different rooms in the house and watch their own feed of that live performance. And one of the things that I learned from working with the Juilliard School is the teachers at Juilliard would say, when it comes to younger performers, it's really important for them to have a chance to speak, to introduce the piece, and to ask the performer to talk about what they're trying to show in that piece. So I took that training, and one of the features of my night is that we really encourage students to speak and to introduce the piece and actually think about, I've been working on vibrato in this piece, or I've been working on improvisation, or I've been working on my dynamics and expressive techniques. And by saying that, it also means that when they go to play the piece, they're thinking about it and trying to create that, which then, of course, helps things like exams and future assessments.
Yeah, I can't tell you the number of times in the past I've gone to concerts of particularly pianists, and they go out on stage, they bow and they play, and they bow and they leave, and they don't say anything at all, and I just feel it's like such a missed connection that we're not making. And so I agree. I think the approach of having your students introduce themselves, introduce the piece, and then you go a step further to say, well, here's what to listen out for, or here's my favorite bit of this, or this is what I'm trying to do here. I think that's a wonderful experience for them. Oh, and to teach them how to bow, because kids don't really get bowing, do they?
No, they don't. And I think you're right. Like when I think about my dad, my dad didn't really play an instrument. And he would come and watch so many performances of me since I was like 7 years old, through to university, and then as a professional. And when I or whoever led the ensemble didn't introduce the piece, how does he know how to connect? How does he know how to appreciate what they're hearing? And particularly when you're speaking about something as in-depth as classical music, we've really got to make that accessible, because otherwise there might be large parts of society that don't try to listen to that music anymore, because they don't know how to. So we've got to help them. It's about really engaging and helping the audience.
We've talked about exams being a feature of your program and also the mic nights. Do you have requirements for your students that they need to attend one mic night a year, or a recital, or do an exam? How does that work?
I don't. I think as studio owners and as peripatetic tutors, we've got to be really careful with how much pressure or what we put importance on. So what I do instead, and I, if I look at my classroom teaching and when I was directing music programs, I like to grow programs and grow very quickly. A minimum 25% growth per year was a standard thing in my program. The biggest one I ever got was 455% growth over 9 years in a school in Sydney.
Wow.
Massive growth. But that's through really trying to be like emotionally intelligent when working with the student and their family. So providing opportunities, talking it up, talking about the value, what will come out of that performance, but saying also and acknowledging that anxiety, nerves is a big part of engaging or not engaging. And I find that sometimes with students in my studio, it might take one or two offers, like, this piece is great. It'd be awesome to hear it next month on the third Wednesday, which is when we do ours, the third Wednesday of the month, next month hearing this piece. But as it gets closer, the student might back out or pull away. And you're like, that's fine. It's not needed. Our lesson is great. You're progressing, but continually putting it out there. And eventually every student engages with that and then has a really positive experience because they've chosen to engage with it. So that's our approach.
Yeah, be flexible. Go with the students' desires as well. I think that's such a huge thing. That's definitely an advantage of the move to online exams from many of these boards, is we've got flexibility now of when you can be assessed. Do you remember as a child you would be ready for your exam and then just have to keep playing the same pieces and scales for the next 2 months because your exam wasn't for 2 months? Now students, can just hit the record button and submit things. I think that's a huge benefit for teachers and students.
Yeah, and I think in the last decade, the term redrafting in music education has become really relevant, and in the arts in general.
Tell us about that. I haven't heard that one.
Okay, well, typically, like when I grew up and went through school, you have one chance to do the thing. Might be a test, might be an assessment, might be perform a piece. You do it. It gets marked, that's it. You get a mark back, you get feedback. What can you do with that? Now, if you're lucky, there might be another assessment in the next month's time, but if you're unlucky, maybe that's the end of the course. And I love that when I went and started teaching in London, I saw that literally you have different colored pens for the students' work. Did you come across this? I saw you taught internationally for a while.
I did, but I don't remember that.
Okay, so you have red pen, green pen. And when I walked in there in late 2015 and was like, what the heck? First of all, why are we writing? Why not use computers? It's a modern academy, and it's London. Why are we writing? And why are we using red pen and green pen? So what I saw was that the students are taught that they get multiple attempts, and they should expect multiple attempts at the same task. So if it was a composition, they do the composition in one color pen. They hand it in, and the teacher gives feedback, and the student gets it back, and it's expected that they then implement that feedback and do a redraft. And then it would go through that process again. And the level of artistry gets a chance to grow very quickly. And I think that when I'm doing, for example, MTB video exams online, student sets up their iDevice, I'm online, they're online, we go through live, do the exam, if there's a mistake, too bad, this is a live performance. And at the end of it, we hit stop, and before submit, we have a talk about what we experienced and whether that, could be improved in the very immediate short term. And if so, let's do a redraft of that next week. And I think this is more akin to what actually happens in real life with gigs, As a gigging musician and running bands, you know that week after week, your performances get better and you talk afterwards, with your fellow musicians. And same with orchestras. The most I saw with that, I had a little gig for a while with the London Lawyers Orchestra. Not that I'm a lawyer at all, but I couldn't believe the amount of redrafting that went in and the openness. Lawyers in the centre of London, after a rehearsal or performance, really critique and offer honest advice on how to improve. And you see that orchestra just go through the roof so quickly, being open to that.
We've mentioned a number of items of technology that you use, particularly Tomplay and the online exams. You obviously use videos, and you've talked about mics a little bit too. For someone that's running an online-only studio, you must have a couple of tips or suggestions for teachers about what you use to really maximize that experience, because there's so many teachers that struggle still with the technology, the best mics to use, those kinds of things. And you're obviously teaching your teachers as well what they should be using. Because I assume you probably got some kind of standards that need to be upheld for your whole studio.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a non-negotiable to have a condenser mic. And early on, I tried several different mixing desks. And I found that just having a mixing desk in there, whether it be a physical one or a digital one, just led to a level of complexity that wasn't needed. So I encourage all my tutors to have a USB connected condenser mic, a condenser so that you can really pick up the full sound of the room. And then with it, whatever product you're using, I particularly like Zoom, but whatever product you're using, to really have the original sound turn on so there's no compression coming in and affecting what you as a teacher or the student can hear. At the beginning of each lesson, the teacher and student always go through and just check the settings, because we know when software updates, settings can change.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit unprofessional to get halfway through a lesson and then to bring up with the student that you can't hear certain things and could they adjust their sound. It should be done at the beginning.
Yeah, just a checklist, right? Like a pilot before they take off, they go through a checklist.
That's it. And also it gives a chance to, to have a little bit of banter in that first 1 to 2 minutes as you go through those settings. The other thing I think is really clear communication. So I use a platform called My Music Staff.
My listeners will be familiar.
There we go. And I saw the Music Teachers Association in New South Wales has a deal where people can sign up through them and get a few months free to try it out. I find that my music staff is really good for clear communication and having a standard across. Before I used it, I was implementing a lot of strategies and trying to communicate them to tutors and teachers, and it just got a little bit disorganized.
So does my music staff work with multiple teachers in one studio?
It does, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I really like that it's scalable. I like that it also means that when you're talking to parents, as a studio owner, when I go to speak to parents, I know that they're all experiencing the same communication and the same standards. And I, once a week, go through and I check all the lesson notes from all my teachers. And I can also see how often students are logging their practice. And if there's a student who's perhaps not logging their practice, I can quickly address that with the teacher, and the teacher can address that with the student. So it's really empowering the fellow tutor to have ownership over what's happening in their lessons.
It's great. I also love the automated billing systems in there. I don't know if you use that as a multi-instrument, multi-teacher studio, but certainly as a one-on-one teacher, it's brilliant. And what about the scheduling? Do you use My Music Staff for that, or is it a bit too complex?
No, I use it. Yeah, I actually don't find anything too complex. Early on, I started to use My Music, and I got a little bit confused, and I booked in a training session, and their teachers are over in Canada. It was some crazy early time, I think 4 a.m. in the morning. I had to wake up to have that training session. But they talked me through everything and sent me a video of what we'd done. So when I was more awake and had my coffee, I could then watch it back and actually go through and set up my back end of My Music Staff really clearly. And I'm so appreciative. I get no kickbacks from them, but I'm just saying that they've got a great product. A couple of years before I started using them, I was looking at different offerings from around the world, and there was nothing even close to what they had. I was actually considering employing a computer programmer to write me something that would do all these things.
Good that you do that now that we look, because there's probably about 15 different options now. There has been an explosion in studio management technology.
Could you talk to me about some of the alternatives? What have you found, or what do you see?
Oh my goodness, there's one called Fonz. There's Teacher Zone. There's studio. I can't remember the name of a few more. I did this funny little TikTok when I first got on there of all the logos for all these different things, and there were literally probably 12 to 15, and there seems to be more every day. So it's a very competitive market. But yeah, I found the same with My Music Staff. It's just been rock solid, and their support's brilliant, and it just takes so much admin off your hands. Teachers, if you are still emailing your students to check their times and asking for or sending out invoices and collecting checks, just stop right now. If it's the only thing you do as a result of this podcast, stop doing that and automate it with credit cards. It's so easy now.
Yeah. So I've got a question then. Have you moved across, because this is the next thing I'd like to try in the next 12 months, is have you moved across to that monthly cycle billing? Because I'm still doing by the school terms, the Australian school terms, which is crazy for students in Hong Kong. They're like, why are we stopping now for 2 weeks?
Yeah.
For students in the US, why did we stop now?
I went monthly, I went monthly, I don't know, 4 years ago. I wrote a blog post all about it.
Wow. I'm going to go look this up.
Yeah. You can go to topmusic.co/monthly, anyone listening that's interested. And I got a whole download chart of how to calculate what you should get paid monthly and how to set it up in My Music Stuff, funnily enough. Yeah. No, it's great. It's such a good system, Jamie. I really like it.
Could you tell me about some of the challenges or how parents respond to that, particularly in the Australian market?
No, all the parents that I just made it mandatory. It's like, sorry guys, I'm moving to this system. And I talked it up with them because it's so much easier for them, as long as they're happy paying with a credit card, which everyone does nowadays. And as long as you can confirm with them the fact that, their details are secure, because you're not seeing it. It's all sort of hosted offsite. It's done with Stripe. So it's safe and secure, and it's easy. They don't have to think about it, and bang, it's done. So I didn't have any pushback from parents. They all actually quite liked the system. And, if there's times when you need to change or pause the billing, if students go away for an extended period, whatever it is, you can do all of that as well. And there's always questions about, but what if I don't teach on Mondays, or what if all the public holidays are on a Friday, and all these kinds of things. I do talk about that in the blog post and the comments. There's probably 40 comments under that blog post where I've tried to answer all those questions. Yeah, definitely
I'm
check it
going
out.
straight there over lunch. I'm going to look this up. Okay, good. Thank you.
No worries. Well, Jamie, it's been a super fun chat. I have a feeling we could talk a lot more, and I'd love to have another conversation with you another time. But can you wrap up with any plans you've got for your school in the future? What's the dream for you, either with your school or more generally with arts education in Australia?
Well, the main thing is I want to grow the studio. Having gone through Audible recently with the E-Myth and thinking a lot about the opportunities for scaling and for sharing what we know as studio owners with other teachers and getting those outcomes. That's what I'd like to do. I'd really like to gradually increase the amount of teachers teaching through my studio. I don't like to think of it as a platform, but actually as a studio. Get to a few open mic nights a month, and to continue offering all those exam opportunities through it as well. So that's my plans.
Sounds great. And you're obviously coaching and training all those teachers that you work with, so it's a mentoring system as well, I imagine.
Yeah, which fits nicely into my work with the Music Teachers Association here in New South Wales, which, by the way, we have 6 states worth of them around Australia. So if you're not currently in a Music Teachers Association, I'd strongly recommend having a look at what they're offering and consider joining.
Great to be getting some young people involved in those organisations too. So congratulations. I consider us young now that I know you're the same age as me. So if people want to find out more about your studio, give us a little plug. What's your web address and where can people find out more?
Absolutely. It's Gibson Online Music School.com.au.
Fantastic. Jamie, thanks a million. I hope the lockdown doesn't extend too much longer for you down over there. But luckily, your school's all set up, so not too much of an issue.
That's right. Have a great one.
Thank you. See ya. Well, I hope you enjoyed my interview today with Jamie. And if you'd like to connect with him, then do head to our show notes page for links to some of the things and resources and events and things like that he was talking about. It certainly was inspiring to listen to him, and we have very similar ideals, missions as well, in what we would like to achieve with the work that we do with teachers in particular in improving the music educational outcomes of teachers and students all around the world, with the goal of, well, hopefully having more children and adults enjoying and engage with music for a lifetime. Wouldn't that be great? I love working on that. Sounds like Jamie does too, and it was great to meet him and explore and share that discussion with you today. Until next week, I will sign off now. I'm Tim Top, and you've been listening to the Topcast from topmusic.co. Make sure you check out our membership sites over at topmusicpro.com, and I'll see you in there. Otherwise, we'll speak to you again next week. Bye-bye. For more information about this episode and to find out how to enhance your own teaching, visit topmusic.co. You'll find everything you need for your studio, from lesson plans to cheat sheets, quick win teaching ideas, and guides on how to build your teaching business. Plus, you'll be connected to a global community of the world's top music teachers. And when you're ready, join hundreds of other teachers around the world by becoming a Top Music Pro member and get access to all our bonus content and flagship courses. And don't forget to follow topmusic.co on social media and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it. That's all for today. We'll see you in the studio.